The chandelier-lit grandeur of the Willow Creek Pavilion in downtown Seattle shimmered with wealth and self-importance on a crisp October evening in 2024. Men in tailored tuxedos and women in glittering gowns mingled, their champagne flutes clinking softly over murmured boasts of philanthropy. The annual Valor Awards Gala was in full swing, a night where the city's elite patted themselves on the back for honoring military heroes while basking in their own reflected glory. But as the golden light of dusk poured through the towering windows, a figure slipped into the room, unnoticed at first, like a shadow cast against a spotlight. Eleanor Hayes stood hesitantly at the entrance, her calloused hands clutching a worn manila envelope and a faded photograph. At 47, she carried the weight of a life spent scraping by her graying hair tied back in a simple knot, her face etched with lines from years of double shifts at the diner and late nights at the laundromat. Her threadbare navy coat, patched at the elbows, hung loosely over a pair of scuffed loafers that had seen too many miles. In her trembling fingers, the photograph showed a young man in a crisp marine uniform, his eyes bright with a dreamer's hope. To the polished crowd, Eleanor was an intruder, her presence a jarring note in their symphony of privilege. "Ma'am, you're in the wrong place," came a sharp voice from behind her. Officer Derek Walsh, a broad-shouldered cop in his early 30s, strode forward, his polished badge gleaming under the chandeliers. His partner, Officer Nathan Cole, trailed close behind, their uniforms crisp and their postures rigid with authority. Walsh's eyes raked over Eleanor's worn clothes, his lip curling slightly. "This is a private event. Invited guests only. You need to leave." Eleanor's grip tightened on the envelope. "I have an invitation," she said softly, her voice nearly lost in the hum of the gala. "My son, Lucas Hayes, is being honored tonight." She extended the crumpled paper with shaking hands, but Walsh barely glanced at it before waving it off with a dismissive smirk. "Ma'am, I'm sure you think you do, but this doesn't look right," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "This event is for military families, and, well, you don't exactly fit the part. Let's go quietly now." Cole nodded, stepping closer to block her path, his hand resting casually on his belt. Across the room, Victor Langley caught sight of the commotion. A real estate tycoon in his late 40s, Victor had bankrolled much of the gala, his company's logo plastered across every banner. His custom-made suit cost more than Eleanor's yearly rent, and his stride across the marble floor exuded the confidence of a man who bought influence with every handshake. "Officers, what's the issue?" he asked, though his tone suggested he'd already judged the situation. "Just handling an uninvited guest, sir," Walsh replied, his chest puffing up under Victor's gaze. "She claims she's got an invitation, but it's clearly a mistake." Victor's eyes swept over Eleanor, his expression a mix of pity and disdain. "I see," he said, his voice smooth but cold. "We can't have disruptions at an event like this. These families have earned their place here." He gestured vaguely at Eleanor, as if her presence were a blemish on his carefully curated evening. Eleanor's hands shook harder, but her voice grew steadier. "I'm the mother of a hero," she said, locking eyes with Victor despite the weight of his stare. "My son, Lucas, died for this country, and I have every right to be here for his honor." Her words only drew a sharp laugh from Walsh, the sound slicing through the elegant chatter. "Lady, you've been reading too many novels. Military families don't look like this." He reached for the envelope, his patience gone. Before Eleanor could react, he snatched it from her and tore it in half, the rip echoing like a gunshot. The pieces fluttered to the floor, and Eleanor dropped to her knees, scrambling to gather them as tears welled in her eyes. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "That was all I had of him." Walsh wasn't done. He plucked the photograph from her other hand, holding it up with a mocking grin. "This your son? Looks like any grunt to me. Probably found this in a pawn shop." With a cruel flick, he dropped it and ground his boot into the frame, the glass shattering under his heel. Eleanor's sob was raw, a sound of grief so deep it seemed to shake the air itself. The crowd had gathered now, drawn by the spectacle but keeping their distance, as if poverty were contagious. Some shifted uncomfortably, but none intervened. This was Victor's event, and he was in control, so he thought. He nodded to Walsh. "Get her out of here. Now." But as Walsh grabbed Eleanor's arm, a low, commanding voice cut through the room like a blade. "I suggest you let her go." The words came from the back, where 8 men in dark suits had risen from their seats in unison, their movements precise and purposeful. The speaker, Colonel Marcus Tate, stepped forward, his presence silencing the room. At 55, Tate carried the weight of decades in combat, his dress uniform adorned with ribbons that told of sacrifice no money could buy. His steel-gray eyes locked onto Walsh, and for the first time, the officer's confidence faltered. "I said, let her go," Tate repeated, his voice calm but unyielding. Behind him, 7 other men stood ready, their bearing marking them as something more than guests. Walsh's hand dropped from Eleanor's arm as if burned, and he turned to face the approaching figure. Victor stepped forward, his face flushing with indignation. "Colonel Tate, I presume? I'm Victor Langley, the primary sponsor of this event. I respect your service, but we can't have disruptions. This woman doesn't belong here." Tate's gaze shifted to Victor, and the room seemed to hold its breath. "Mrs. Hayes has more right to be here than anyone in this room," he said, his words carrying the weight of absolute truth. He knelt beside Eleanor, helping her gather the torn pieces of her invitation, his gentleness a stark contrast to the tension around them. Eleanor's voice broke through the silence, raw but resolute. "My son's name is Lucas Hayes, and he died serving this country." The name hung in the air, and a ripple of recognition passed through the crowd. Some guests pulled out their phones, sensing something monumental unfolding. Tate rose, addressing the room with the authority of a man who'd led soldiers into battle. "Mrs. Hayes was invited to see her son receive the honor he earned with his life. Anyone who thinks she doesn't belong here doesn't know what sacrifice means." Victor's face reddened, his control slipping. "This is my event," he sputtered, but his voice lacked conviction. The crowd's murmurs grew, some guests exchanging uneasy glances, others beginning to question their own complicity. Tate turned to the event staff, his voice steady. "Prepare the honor guard. We're proceeding with the ceremony." Now, the staff scrambled to comply, and Victor's expression shifted to panic as he realized the situation was spiraling beyond his grasp. From the third row, an elderly woman in a faded service jacket stood, her voice clear despite her age. "I'm a veteran's mother. If what you're saying is true, I'm ashamed I didn't speak up sooner." Her words sparked a shift in the room. A man in his 50s leaned forward, whispering loudly, "I was in Kandahar." "Lucas Hayes, I know that name." Others began to nod, some searching their phones, piecing together the truth. Eleanor stepped forward, her modest frame commanding the room. "You think honor comes from a bank account?" she asked, her voice rising with a fire that silenced the crowd. "I worked 3 jobs to send Lucas to school. I sold my home so he could wear that uniform. I gave everything so he could serve with pride." Her words were a reckoning, and the room fell silent, the chandeliers casting a solemn glow over the scene. Tate placed a hand on her shoulder, his gesture both protective and reverent. "Lucas Hayes died 6 months ago in Afghanistan," he began, his voice measured but heavy. "He was 24, a sergeant in the Marines. He gave his life to save others, and his mother has waited for this day to see him honored." The crowd gasped, and Victor's face contorted with disbelief. "That's impossible," he stammered, gesturing at Eleanor's worn clothes. "She's not. You think dignity is a designer suit?" Eleanor cut in, her voice fierce. "My son died saving lives, protecting soldiers who came home to their families. He didn't care about your wealth or your status. He did his duty." From the back, a Marine stepped forward, his scarred face etched with emotion. "I'm Staff Sergeant Javier Cruz," he said, his voice steady but thick. "6 months ago, our convoy was ambushed in a canyon. We were pinned down, outnumbered, with no way out. Bullets were flying, rocks exploding around us. We were saying goodbye to our families, preparing to die. But Lucas, he didn't hesitate. He stood up, shouting, firing his rifle, drawing every enemy gun to him. He gave us a chance to escape." Cruz's voice broke, and he paused, his hands trembling. "He saved 12 of us that day. 12 lives, 12 families who still have fathers, husbands, sons. Because of Lucas." One by one, the other Marines spoke, their stories weaving a tapestry of courage. One had been pulled from a burning vehicle, another carried to safety despite enemy fire. Each tale added weight to the room, transforming it into a sacred space. Tate reached into his jacket, producing a folded letter, its edges worn from time. "This is Lucas's last letter home," he said, handing it to Eleanor with reverence. "He wrote it the night before his final mission." Eleanor's hand shook as she unfolded it, her voice trembling as she read aloud. "Dear Mom, if you're reading this, I didn't make it. But I need you to know I fought for what you taught me to be brave, to do what's right, even when it scares you. The room was still, broken only by muffled sobs from the crowd. Master Sergeant Daniel Brooks, the oldest of the Marines, stepped forward, his silver-streaked hair catching the light. I was Lucas's squad leader, he said, his voice heavy with loss. I held him as he died. His last words were, "Tell my mom I kept my promise. Tell her I was brave." The 8 Marines formed a line before Eleanor, snapping to attention and rendering a perfect salute. The gesture was a profound acknowledgement of her as a Gold Star mother, and tears streamed down faces throughout the room. Tate opened a wooden box, its surface polished by careful hands. "Mrs. Hayes, on behalf of a grateful nation, I present the Medal of Honor, awarded posthumously to your son, Sergeant Lucas Hayes, for conspicuous gallantry above and beyond the call of duty." Eleanor accepted the box, her fingers tracing the medal's star-shaped outline. "He was just my boy," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Just my Lucas, who wanted to make a difference." The room erupted in applause, slow and deliberate, a collective heartbeat honoring a hero. Even Walsh, his hat now in his hands, stood humbled, his earlier arrogance gone. Victor remained frozen, the weight of his actions crushing him. He had mocked a Medal of Honor recipient, insulted a mother whose son saved the men now standing in judgment. Brooks turned to Victor, his gaze unrelenting. "You have 30 seconds to explain why you thought it was acceptable to humiliate a Gold Star mother and destroy her invitation to her son's ceremony." Victor stammered, his voice barely audible. "I didn't know. I thought she was just—" He trailed off, realizing no excuse could justify his cruelty. The Marine's silence was louder than any accusation. Eleanor looked at him, her eyes holding only sorrow. "My son died for you too, Mr. Langley. He died so you could live free, make your millions. He didn't care what you looked like or what you owned. He just did what was right." Victor dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "Mrs. Hayes, I'm a fool. I insulted your son, destroyed your invitation, treated you like nothing when you're everything. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I swear I'll spend my life making this right." Eleanor placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Lucas would want you to learn, to be better. That's what he died for, second chances." Her forgiveness was a challenge, one Victor would carry forever. The ceremony resumed, the room transformed. Tate took the podium, his voice resonant. "We gather to honor Sergeant Lucas Hayes, a man who embodied sacrifice. His Medal of Honor is a testament to his courage, a courage born from his mother's love and strength." Eleanor stood at the front, the Marines around her like sentinels. The medal hung around her neck, its weight grounding her in the moment. "Lucas," she whispered, "I'm so proud of you." 2 years later, Eleanor stood in a modest community center in rural Montana, speaking at the opening of the Lucas Hayes Foundation. The room was packed with families, veterans, and students, all there to celebrate a scholarship program for children of fallen soldiers. Beside her stood a 15-year-old girl, Sarah, the daughter of a Marine Lucas had saved. "Your son didn't just save my dad," Sarah said, her voice steady. "He saved our future. Because of him, I'm going to college." In the back, Victor watched quietly, a check in his hand to fund the foundation's next year. His transformation was slow, marked by quiet acts of atonement. Walsh and Cole, now working in community outreach, carried their shame as a reminder to treat every person with dignity. Eleanor had become a voice for military families, her son's medal a symbol of love and sacrifice. The story of Lucas Hayes and his mother wasn't about wealth or status. It was about courage hidden in humble places, about a mother's love that birthed a hero, and about redemption earned through humility. It's a reminder that the greatest honors are won not with money, but with the lives we touch. What do you think? Can wealth ever buy true honor, or is it only earned through sacrifice? Should Victor have been forgiven so easily, or did he deserve harsher judgment? Who are the unsung heroes in your life, and what makes their courage stand out? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button, and subscribe for more stories that make you think twice about what really matters.